How did Allah, Almighty, created the human beings? In this episode of Understanding Islam, we will discuss the miracle of creating the descendants of our father Adam and his wife, whose name will not be mentioned to remain respectful of Allah, Almighty, who decided to keep her name anonymous. The first step of explaining the phases which a baby goes through in the creation process, as described by Allah, Almighty, in the Holy Quran over 1400 years ago, is to start with the following recitations of some verses from various chapters, surahs, from the Holy Quran. Following the recitations, we will build a model which represents the phases of creating a baby in the womb of his mother in a sequential manner. The list of recitations in a semi-sequential manner are: Chapter 22, Al-Hajj, the Pilgrimage, verse 5. Chapter 32, Al-Sajda, the Prostration, verses 7 to 9. Chapter 23, Al-Mu'minun, the Believers, verses 12 to 17. Chapter 76, Al-Insan, the Human, verses 1 to 2.
يا أيها الناس إن كنتم في ريب من البعث فإنا خلقناكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم من علقة ثم من مضغة مخلقة وغير مخلقة لنبين لكم ونقر في الأرحام ما نشاء إلى أجل مسمى ثم نخرجكم طفلا ثم لتبلغوا أشدكم ومنكم من يتوفى ومنكم من يرد إلى أرذل العمر لكي لا يعلم من بعد علم شيئا وترى الأرض هامدة فإذا أنزلنا عليها الماء اهتزت وربت من كل زوج بهيج.
O people, if you should be in doubt about the resurrection, then consider that indeed we created you from dust, then from a sperm drop, then from a clinging clot, and then from a lump of flesh, formed and unformed, that we may show you. And we settle in the wombs whom we will for a specified term. Then we bring you out as a child, and then we develop you that you may reach your time of maturity. And among you is he who is taken an early death, and among you is he who is returned to the most decrepit old age, so that he knows, after once having knowledge, nothing. And you see the earth barren, and when we send down upon it rain, it quivers and swells and grows something of every beautiful kind.
الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين.
Who perfected everything which he created and began the creation of man from clay.
ثم جعل نسله من سلالة من ماء مهين.
Then he made his posterity out of the extract of a liquid disdained.
ثم سواه ونفخ فيه من روحه وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون.
Then he proportioned him and breathed into him from his created soul, and made for you hearing and vision and hearts. Little are you grateful.
ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين.
And certainly did we create man from an extract of clay.
ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين.
Then we placed him as a sperm drop in a firm lodging.
ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر فتبارك الله أحسن الخالقين.
Then we made the sperm drop into a clinging clot, and we made the clot into a lump of flesh, and we made from the lump bones, and we covered the bones with flesh. Then we developed him into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators.
ثم إنكم بعد ذلك لميتون.
Then indeed, after that you are to die.
ثم إنكم يوم القيامة تبعثون.
Then indeed you, on the day of resurrection, will be resurrected.
ولقد خلقنا فوقكم 7 طرائق وما كنا عن الخلق غافلين.
And we have created above you 7 layered heavens, and never have we been of our creation unaware.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
هل أتى على الإنسان حين من الدهر لم يكن شيئا مذكورا.
Has there not come upon man a period of time when he was not a thing even mentioned?
إنا خلقنا الإنسان من نطفة أمشاج نبتليه فجعلناه سميعا بصيرا.
Indeed, we created man from a sperm drop mixture, that we may try him, and we made him hearing and seeing.
From the previous recitations, we can build a basic and simplified model of the phases of the development of the human infant. It is to be noted that there are some differences between the English translation shown in the recitation and the English translation presented in the following text, which is made by the author/compiler of this document. The corrected English translation is more creditable. In chapter 32, Al-Sajda, the prostration, verses 7 to 9, Allah, Almighty, stated, "Who perfected everything. He created and began the creation of man from a strain of clay. Then he made his posterity from a strain of humble water, in nature and composition. Then he proportioned him and then breath into him from his soul. And he gifted you with hearing, vision, and hearts. Little are you grateful." In chapter 23, Al-Mu'minun, the believers, verses 12 to 17, Allah, Almighty, stated, "And we created man from a strain of clay. Then we made him a nutfa, a sperm and an egg. Then we placed the nutfa in a secured lodging, the womb. Then we transformed the nutfa to alaka, leech, then we transformed the alaka to a mudghah, embryo, then we created the bones, then we cladded the bones with flesh, then we constructed him to be in another shape and form. So blessed is Allah, the ultimate creator. Then indeed, after that you are to die. Then indeed, you on the day of resurrection shall be resurrected." In chapter 22, Al-Hajj, the pilgrimage, Verse 5, Allah, Almighty, stated,
O people, if you are in doubt about resurrection, then remember that we created you from sand. And then from a nutfa, a sperm and an egg. Then from a liquor, leech. Then from unformed mudghah, embryogenesis. Then from a formed mudghah, fetus genesis, and that is to bring the truth into prominence, and to settle whom we wish in the wombs, uteruses, for a specified term of time. Then we bring you as a child. Then you reach the age of maturity, and full strength. And some of you die, and some of you reach the fragile old age, so that they know, after their wealth of knowledge nothing, become senile. And you see the earth barren, too poor to produce much or any vegetation. But if we send upon it the rain, it quivers, shakes, and gets revived, and grows of every creature a festive couple. In chapter 76, Al-Insan, the human, verses 1 to 2, Allah, Almighty, stated, Has there not come upon man a period he was not even a thing worth mentioning? We created man from a nutfa amshag, fertilized egg, so we can afflict, test, him. And this is why we made him able to hear and see.
From the above verses, we can construct a child's developmental phases inside the womb of his mother as shown in the following diagram. To explain, when the nutfas, an egg and sperm, meet, a zygote is formed and quickly begins dividing to become an embryo.
As pregnancy progresses, the embryo becomes a fetus. The fetus becomes a neonate or newborn at birth.
The model of the baby phases of development as per the description of the Holy Quran is: the main ingredient from which Adam and his wife, peace be upon them, were created at the same time and in parallel is sand. Then the sand was mixed with water to create a strain of clay. The reason for stating the term strain of clay is that when Adam and his wife, peace be upon them, were created, the sand that was used for their creation was collected from various spots of the earth crust. The sand was having several colors, physical and chemical compositions or ingredients. The sand had three colors, which were the white, the red, and the black. This is the reason why humans come in different colors, physical, chemical and genetic characteristics.
About 99% of the mass of the human body is made up of 6 elements: oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, and phosphorus. Only about 0.85% is composed of another 5 elements: potassium, sulfur, sodium, chlorine, and magnesium. All of the 11 are necessary for life. The remaining elements are trace elements, of which more than a dozen are thought on the basis of good evidence to be necessary for life. All of the mass of the trace elements put together, less than 10 grams for a human body, do not add up to the body mass of magnesium, the least common of the 11 non-trace elements. In an article published by Al Jazeera Channel website under the title, Studies Confirm the Creation of Man from Clay, the following was stated. New studies and research have proven that substances found in clay have a major role in some of the primary processes of life formation, confirming the Quranic fact that man was created from clay. A team at Howard Hughes Medical Institute and Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston said they found that a baby mineral or clay called aqueous aluminium silicate helps cells use genetic material called RNA, which in turn is one of the key elements of life. In addition, clay helps to form small bags of fat and fluid in a living cell. Researchers Jack Shostak, Martin Hansig and Shelley Fujikawa drew on previous research that concluded that clay may catalyze the chemical reaction required to form RNA from building blocks known as nucleids. The researchers found that the clay accelerated the amino acid formation of small sac-like formations called vesicles. The clay also transports RNA into these vesicles. It is worth mentioning that the Holy Quran, which was revealed to the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, may Allah bless him and grant him peace, more than 14 centuries ago, and its verses are still recited to this day. There are several verses that confirm this fact, including the Almighty's saying, "We created man from a breed, strain, of clay" in verse number 12 of chapter 23, Surat Al-Mu'minun, the believers. Each vesicle type has a different function, and different vesicles are necessary for different biological processes. Vesicles can help transport materials that an organism needs to survive and recycle waste materials. They can also absorb and destroy toxic substances and pathogens to prevent cell damage and infection. Although they are similar to vacuoles, which also store materials, vesicles have their own unique functions and abilities. For example, they can fuse with the membranes of other cells to carry out a specific role, such as breaking down another cell. Vesicles also help store and transport materials such as proteins, enzymes, hormones, and neurotransmitters. They are a small but essential part of biological systems and processes such as digestion and metabolism, the nervous system, kidney and liver function.
The author/compiler of this document believes that the failure or malfunction of vesicles is a potential cause of cell cancer as a result of getting poisoned by toxic substances and pathogens. Also, the human being is created of two different strains of genetics, DNA, half of which come from the father and the other half from the mother. In simple terms, DNA deoxyribonucleic acid, abbreviated DNA, is the molecule that carries genetic information for the development and functioning of an organism.
DNA is made of two linked strands that twist around each other to resemble a twisted ladder, a shape known as a double helix. Each strand has a backbone made of alternating sugar, deoxyribose, and phosphate groups. Attached to each sugar is one of four bases, adenine, A, cytosine, C, guanine, G, or thymine, T. The two strands are connected by chemical bonds between the bases, adenine bonds with thymine, and cytosine bonds with guanine. The sequence of the bases along DNA's backbone encodes biological information, such as the instructions for making a protein or RNA molecule. Proteins are large, complex molecules that play many critical roles in the body. They do most of the work in cells, and are required for the structure, function, and regulation of the body's tissues and organs. Proteins are made up of hundreds or thousands of smaller units called amino acids, which are attached to one another in long chains. There are 20 different types of amino acids that can be combined to make a protein. The sequence of amino acids determines each protein's unique three-dimensional structure and its specific function. Amino acids are coded by combinations of three DNA building blocks, nucleotides, determined by the sequence of genes. Proteins can be described according to their large range of functions in the body, listed in alphabetical order. Examples of protein functions: the following image shows the structure of DNA. On the other hand, ribonucleic acid, abbreviated RNA, is a nucleic acid present in all living cells that has structural similarities to DNA. Unlike DNA, however, RNA is most often single-stranded. An RNA molecule has a backbone made of alternating phosphate groups and the sugar ribose, rather than the deoxyribose found in DNA. Attached to each sugar is one of four bases, adenine, A, uracil, U, cytosine, C, or guanine, G. Different types of RNA exist in cells: messenger RNA, mRNA, ribosomal RNA, rRNA, and transfer RNA, tRNA. In addition, some RNAs are involved in regulating gene expression. Certain viruses use RNA as their genomic material. In the last paragraph, we mentioned the expression genomic material. The genome is the entire set of DNA instructions found in a cell. In humans, the genome consists of 23 pairs of chromosomes located in the cell's nucleus, as well as a small chromosome in the cell's mitochondria. A genome contains all the information needed for an individual to develop and function. And since we mentioned the term chromosomes, the chromosomes are thread-like structures made of protein and a single molecule of DNA that serve to carry the genomic information from cell to cell. In plants and animals, including humans, chromosomes reside in the nucleus of cells. Humans have 22 pairs of numbered chromosomes, autosomes, and 1 pair of sex chromosomes, XX or XY, for a total of 46. Each pair contains 2 chromosomes, one coming from each parent, which means that children inherit half of their chromosomes from their mother, and half from their father. Chromosomes can be seen through a microscope when the nucleus dissolves during cell division. The clay, which is made of sand and water, is viscous and possessing adhesive qualities, and takes the shape of a male sperm and a female egg, which are described in the Holy Quran as a nutfa. When the male sperm and female egg, the nutfas, get united, they form the fertilized egg, which is described in the Holy Quran as nutfa amshag, which undergoes a sequence of developmental phases, which start with a zygote and end with a blastocyst in a process known as cleavage sequence, where the cell continues to divide into 2, then 4, then 8. The nutfa amshag starting point, which is the zygote, is made of one cell. This is the first stage or phase in the development of the multicellular eukaryote, any cell or organism that possesses a clearly defined nucleus.
The linguistic meaning of the word amshag in Arabic has been tailor-designed to accommodate the understanding of the fertilization of female egg by a male sperm, or the mixing of 2, or more, things of different color, composition, race, etc.
But the author/compiler of this document believes that the correct meaning of the word amshag is the entity which results from the mixing of different materials, and has the ability to be split or to divide on its own in a breeding manner to develop into a new entity of new features and qualities. Simply stated, it is a transforming entity. The nutfa amshag, starting as a zygote, begins the cleavage sequence where the cell continues to divide 2, then 4, then 8. At a 16-cell to 32-cell stage, the embryo becomes a murula, since the shape resembles a mulberry. So, if fertilization doesn't occur, the egg moves into the uterus, where it exits its body during their next menstrual period. But if fertilization does occur, their fertilized egg becomes a zygote, a single cell with genes from both parents. The zygote then travels down the fallopian tube, where it becomes a morula. Once it reaches the uterus, the morula becomes a blastocyst. After several days of residing in the uterus, the blastocyst then burrows into the uterine lining in a process called implantation. The blastocyst continues to make new cells, which separate into layers. About 10 to 12 days after fertilization, the blastocyst develops into an embryo. It remains an embryo until about 9 weeks after implantation, when it then becomes a fetus. The blastocyst consists of a fluid-filled cavity which contains the cells of the embryoblast and the trophoblast. The embryoblast is the initial structure of the new human being, whereas the trophoblast is the origin of placenta and membranes. In the Holy Quran, the phase of development that follows the nutfa amshaj is the alaliqa or the leech. The reason that the seed embryo is called alaliqa or a leech can be understood by looking at the following images. The reasons that the seed embryo, the embryo in its first phase of development, or alaliqa, takes the shape of Hierodomedicinalis leech, which are hematophagous, creatures attaching themselves to a host with a sucker, and feeding on blood, are. The leeches are earth-created creatures, which means that they are made from the same minerals the human being is made of. This means the leeches and humans are compatible with each other. Allah Almighty stated in verses 10 to 18 of chapter 71, Surat Noah.
I said, seek your Lord's forgiveness, for he is truly most forgiving.
He sends the clouds to you to shower you with abundant rain. He supplies you with wealth and children, and give you gardens as well as rivers. What is the matter with you that you are not in awe of the majesty of Allah? He created you in phases of development. Do you not see how Allah created 7 heavens, one above the other, placing the moon within them as a reflected light, and the sun as a radiant lamp? And Allah planted you from the earth, as the plants. Then He will return you to it, and then simply bring you forth again. The key points in the above verses are the principle of creating in phases or stages, and the 7 skies lying on top of each other are an example of that. The same applies to human anatomy, and if we take the skin as an example, we will find out that is composed of 7 layers, which are epidermis, which includes stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinosum, stratum basal, dermis, hypodermis. Allah Almighty grows all creatures from the soil of the earth in the same way the plants grow. This is evidence that all creatures are made of soil and rain water, which falls from the skies to bring life to all dead creatures buried in the earth crust, as seeds carrying the genetics of all creatures. The leeches feed on their host by sucking its blood. The leeches are human-friendly. Leeches have been used in medicine from ancient times until the 19th century to draw blood from patients. In modern times, leeches find medical use in treatment of joint diseases such as epicondylitis and osteoarthritis, extremity vein diseases, and in microsurgery, while hyaluron is used as an anticoagulant drug to treat blood clotting disorders. In leeches, most of the coelom, body cavity, is filled with botryoidal tissue, a loose connective tissue composed of clusters of cells of mesodermal origin. The cells of mesodermal origin are the most abundant in the human body, representing a great variety of cell types, including the musculoskeletal system, bone, cartilage and muscle, cardiovascular system, heart, blood and blood vessels, as well as the connective tissues found throughout our bodies.
The next phase of embryo development following the alaliqa or a leech is the unformed muthga known as embryogenesis, which then develops into a formed muthga known as fetus genesis. This transformation happens in the 28th week of pregnancy.
The following video displays the journey of embryo development from a zygote to a blastocyst to an oligo, which develops to a seed embryo known as an unformed moothga or embryogenesis.
Men, and especially women, possess various organs that are optimally suited for the creation of another human being. The ovary possesses about 500,000 eggs embedded in follicles. Several follicles, and therefore eggs, mature in each cycle. The dominant follicle grows to about 2 centimeters, and the fimbriated end of the fallopian tube, which eventually catches the egg, moves to the site of ovulation. The egg consists of an outer layer called the corona radiata. Underneath is another protective layer, the zona pellucida. Both layers must be penetrated by the sperm cell in order to reach the cell nucleus that contains 23 different chromosomes. Each chromosome contains DNA. DNA is the blueprint for building our body cells. Eye color, body size, arrangement and function of our organs. It's all in there. If 2 identical chromosomes occur in one cell, we can later speak of trisomy. The egg cell is transported inside the fallopian tube with the help of cilia and mucus produced by glands in the walls of the fallopian tube. Additional contractions of the muscle layers help to transport the ovum. At a speed of about 3 to 4 millimeters per minute, something else makes its way from the other side of the fallopian tube. Sperm cells, thousands of them, and barely visible. They all have only one goal: reaching the ovum. A sperm cell's nucleus contains the male's genetic information. Through messenger substances emitted by the egg cell, the remaining sperm cells find their way to the ovum. The goal of all sperm cells is to penetrate the 2 outer layers to reach the chromosomes. The sperm cell penetrates corona radiata and zona pellucida, resulting in the degradation of the acrosome cap. Upon entering the cytoplasm, fertilization occurs, resulting in activation. Activation causes, among other things, a structural change of the zona pellucida so that no further sperm can penetrate. In addition, activation causes the ovum to complete its second maturation division. In this process, the sister chromatids are pulled into opposite poles, and a female pronucleus and a polar body are formed. The sperm's tail and head gradually degenerate into cytoplasm. The condensed sperm nucleus rapidly increases enormously in size, and the chromatin decondenses. Thus, a male pronucleus is formed with 23 unreplicated chromosomes that possess the genetic information of the father. As the two pronuclei approach, both double their DNA, resulting in replicated chromosomes. Finally, syngamy occurs, in which the pronuclei dissolve and the chromosomes of male and female are properly aligned in the spindle apparatus. Now, the cell is called a zygote, which is the very first cell of the new human being. The stage of cleavage begins. In this process, the cell continues to divide. 2 cells, then 4, then 8. At a 16-cell to 32-cell stage embryo, we speak of a murula, since the shape resembles a mulberry. The cells are still enclosed by the zona pellucida. Thus, after each cell division, whilst the number of cells increases, the size of each cell diminishes. Finally, the blastocyst is formed. The blastocyst consists of a fluid-filled cavity, the cells of the embryoblast and the trophoblast. The embryoblast is the initial structure of the new human being, whereas the trophoblast is the origin of placenta and membranes. Let's see the individual stages in the fallopian tube. Fertilization occurs at the end of the tube. The first cell division takes place about a day after fertilization. Eventually, further cell divisions happen, forming the murula. And in the uterus, the blastocyst is created. At this stage, the mucous membranes of the uterus or womb has already been prepared for the implantation of the blastocyst. Usually, the blastocyst implants in the posterior wall of the uterus. However, implantation can also occur on the side, as we will see in a moment. The blastocyst floats in the protective and nourishing uterine mucus. For implantation in the uterus, the blastocyst must first hatch from the protective zona pellucida. Then the blastocyst burrows further and further into the uterine lining, like a parasite. Let's take a closer look at this. The endometrium has a protective epithelium and capillaries filled with blood, as well as mucus-producing glands. The trophoblast cells fuse with the endometrium, and a syncytial trophoblast is formed that will nourish the embryo. In addition, hypoblast and epiblast arise from the embryoblast. The embryo burrows further into the endometrium. rapidly increasing in cell mass and leaving a wound, which may result in a completely harmless implantation bleeding. Finally, the amniotic cavity is formed. As the process continues, the yolk sac is created, as well as a non-cellular plug that is later sealed by migrating uterine epithelial cells. The trophoblast rapidly increases in size, with the amniotic cavity and yolk sac remaining relatively small. This gives rise to the chorionic cavity and the body stalk. Three germ layers form from the primitive streak and node. This process is called gastrulation. The germ layers ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm eventually differentiate into various tissues and organs. In the course of the third week of development, neurulation occurs. At that time, the foundation for the central nervous system is laid. The neural groove is formed, closing from the center to the sides. At the sides, small bumps called somites can be seen. The neural groove becomes the neural tube, which later forms, for example, spinal cord and brain. Those cells later become the neural networks, which enable us to think. In the fourth week of development, this process is almost complete. The embryo is still in the amnion, which is filled with amniotic fluid that has numerous functions. The optic placodes, which are the basis for the inner ear, can be seen, and the heart is already pumping blood through the intra-embryonic blood vessels. The yolk sac and the body stalk continue to nourish the embryo. The chorion is the outer membrane and is connected to the body stalk. The chorionic villi are surrounded by maternal blood. This allows them to carry nutrients to the embryo and nourish it. We'll see more on this later.
The following video displays the journey of embryo development from an unformed moothgan known as embryogenesis to a formed moothgan known as fetal genesis in the 9th week and in the 3rd month. So, from the 12th week on, the fetus already has a human-like appearance.
During the 4th week, 3 pairs of pharyngeal arches appear. In addition, the upper limb buds are visible first, followed by the lower limb buds. The embryo is now curved in a C shape. The caudal eminence is tail-like in shape. The somites, which give rise to the cells forming the skeletal muscles and components of the skin, among other things, can still be identified. The embryo continues to grow rapidly, measuring approximately 4 to 5 millimeters by the end of the 4th week. The lens placodes and olfactory pits are formed. The later arms and hands, as well as legs and feet, can be already well identified. The hands will develop from paddles to separate fingers by the 8th week. The embryo is about 23 millimeters long by the middle of the 8th week. The legs will not lose their webbed feet until a few days after the hands. Embryogenesis turns into fetogenesis in the 9th week, and in the 3rd month, that is, from the 12th week on, the fetus already has a human-like appearance. The eyelids are closed. The skin is translucent. In the following weeks, the fetus grows and the ossification of the fetal skeleton takes place, so that the bones are clearly visible on ultrasound images by the 16th week.
The next phase following the formed Muthgen, known as fetogenesis, is the formation of the bones. The next phase following the formation of the bones is the cladding the bones with the flesh. This flesh is what is known as periosteum. The periosteum is the medical definition for the membrane of blood vessels and nerves that wraps around most of your bones. It's what delivers bones their blood supply and gives them their sense of feeling. Special cells in the periosteum help your bones grow and develop and repairs them after a bone fracture. The periosteum has 3 functions: supplying blood to your bones, giving them their sense of feeling, growing and repairing your bones. Blood vessels in the periosteum connect back to your circulatory system to supply fresh, oxygen-rich blood to your bones. Nerves in the periosteum give your bones and the area around them feeling. The periosteum helps your bones grow and develop. Special cells called osteoprogenitors create osteoblasts, the cells that grow your bones. Babies and children whose bones are still growing and developing have lots of active osteoblasts in their periosteum. As you age and your bones stop growing, you have fewer osteoblasts. However, when something damages your bone, like a fracture, your osteoprogenitors cells wake up and create new osteoblasts to heal your bone. As for the skin, which is a proactive shield of the newly created creatures since the very early developmental phases, it has the following functions: protect your body from environmental stresses like germs, pollution, radiation from the sun, and more. Regulate your body temperature. Receive sensory information. Store water, fat, and vitamin D. The final phase of the fetus development is the transformation to another more defined and functional creature, which is the neonate or newborn at birth. From about the 18th week of pregnancy, the mother can feel the movement of the fetus, and the thumb-sucking reflex has already been established. In the 28th week of pregnancy, the hair on head and the eyebrows continue to grow. In addition, the eyes open. From our knowledge of how Allah Almighty has created Adam and his wife, peace be upon them, we know that when Allah Almighty blew his breath into Adam's head, he sneezed. So, the angels asked him to say thanks Allah. So, he said thanks Allah. And Allah Almighty replied by saying your God has placed his mercy upon you. And when the breath of Allah Almighty reached Adam's eyes, he looked at the heavens' fruits. And when the breath reached his stomach, he jumped in a hasty rush before the breath reached his feet to pick and eat the heavens' fruits. From the above description, we can conclude, with reservation, that the opening of the fetus eyes is an indication that an angel, on behalf of Allah Almighty, has blown the breath into the fetus's head, which is the milestone of the transformation from an unformed Muthgan known as embryogenesis to formed Muthgan known as fetus genesis. The mercy of Allah Almighty has been inherited by all of Adam and his wife's children till the resurrection day. The following video displays the bone's development all the way to the birth.
Embryogenesis turns into fetal genesis in the 9th week, and in the 3rd month, that is, from the 12th week on, the fetus already has a human-like appearance. The eyelids are closed, the skin is translucent. In the following weeks, the fetus grows and the ossification of the fetal skeleton takes place, so that the bones are clearly visible on ultrasound images by the 16th week. In addition, the body is completely covered with downy lanugo hairs, which help, among other things, to keep the vernix secreted by dedicated cells on the skin. The vernix protects the skin from direct contact with the amniotic fluid. From about the 18th week, the mother can feel the baby's movements. In addition, the sucking reflex has already been established. By the 28th week, the hair on the head, eyebrows, and eyelashes continue to grow. In addition, the eyes open. The fetus gains a lot of mass in the last few months, and the lanugo hairs and the vernix gradually fade away. It is also slowly getting tighter and tighter in mom's belly. At first, the fetus is supplied by the body stalk and yolk sac, but then more and more by the umbilical cord and placenta. Since the fetus possesses both the DNA of the mother and of the father, the blood of the fetus must not mix with the blood of the mother. The placenta is responsible for this. It is responsible for the exchange of substances between mother and fetus. The chorionic villi, which were previously completely distributed over the chorion, have regressed to other parts of the uterus. The remaining villi are part of the placenta. Maternal blood, rich in oxygen and nutrients, enters the intervillous space via the arteries. Veins carry away the oxygen and nutrient-poor blood. The chorionic villi extract oxygen and necessary nutrients from the mother's blood. Nutrients include carbohydrates, amino acids, fats, vitamins, and iron. Oxygen and nutrients are then transported to the fetus via the veins with the help of the umbilical cord. However, waste products also reach the villi via the arteries. This allows the fetus to release its waste products, such as carbon dioxide and urea, into the maternal blood. The mother's organism then takes over the excretion of these substances. After about 38 weeks, the fetus is fully developed. It measures 50 centimeters and weighs around 3,000 grams. The birth takes place now or in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
The final video covers the phases of development of the embryo from the 5th week of pregnancy all the way to birth as captured by an advanced 3-dimensional ultrasound imaging device. I testify there is no deity but Allah. And I testify that Muhammad is his messenger.